Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn at the Akron Zoo. My name is Mallory and I'm one of the avian keepers here, which means I work with a lot of different bird species. And that's what we're going to be hanging out with today. We have our waterfowl species, so all of the birds that are on the pond. We have 8 different kinds of ducks on our pond, and they come from all over the world, and we're going to kind of learn a little bit about them today. But first, they're pretty hungry, so we are going to go ahead and feed them. So they have a little bit of a puffed wheat treat. So they get wheat in the winter, so this will be like an extra snack for them today. And then we have some of our waterfowl pellet, which has everything that they need in there. And then we have some silver sides for some of our diving ducks. So they primarily eat fish, so that's what we're going to give them today. So we are going to go ahead and see if anyone wants a snack. They got a little bit of breakfast this morning, so we'll see if anyone wants to come over. Sometimes I feel like I'm, sitting in the park and just feeding the birds. We'll see, we've got 2 of our Mandarin Ducks over here. Our male is the more colorful one in the front, and then our female, I like to think that they look like they have eyeliner on their eyes, that like whitish coming from their eyes. So those are 2 Mandarin Ducks, native to Asia. And then this black and white duck over here, that's one of our male hooded mergansers. So that is native to North America. That one in the back, the brown one, who looks almost like a mallard that you would see around here, is actually a female falcated duck. The male of that species is the gray one with the green head. He's very colorful. So that is dimorphism, which means that the 2 different sexes, the male and the female, look very different. So that is very common in waterfowl species. You can see our mandarins are also like that. Pretty much every duck on this pond is sexually dimorphic. Looks like nobody's super hungry. That's our female hooded merganser. So she is pretty much all brown in coloration compared to that male again, who is black and white with the brown on the sides. Way over there, we've got one of our male bicol teal. He just swam away. Maybe we'll try and find him a little bit later. And then straight ahead on land there, we have our female smew. So that is a species native to Europe and Asia. The males look very different. Again, they are mostly black and white, where the females, as you can see there, have that red head and kind of grayish body. She's just looking at a plant.
So why do males and females look different?
Yeah, so the males and females look different. The males are typically more colorful in order to attract a female as a mate. So in order to compete with the other boys out there, they have to look the most colorful and the most healthy to attract a female. And then the females are typically less colorful, so they blend in while they're sitting on the nest. And so that allows them to better camouflage, protect their nest, protect their eggs. So that is typically why they look a little bit different. See, we're kind of striking out on the old food here. They were a little interested in that wheat. So what is really, really interesting about our waterfowl is that right here on the pond, we typically see wild ducks as well. And we actually account for that in their food. So we overfeed them. We got one of our mergansers eating a fish there. We typically will feed them more than what is just necessary for the 29 different ducks that we have, because we know that wild ducks are going to come on in for a free meal. We have 2 different kinds of feeding methods shown in our ducks. So our mergansers that typically are going to eat that fish, our Buffle Heads, our smew, those are more diving ducks. So typically they're going to primarily eat fish. So you saw our female hooded merganser kind of dive down to the bottom, grab one of our silver sides. We'll see if we can get them to do it again. Looks like nobody's really hungry though. And we can maybe wander around and try to find some of our other ducks in a little while. but they are built to dive. So they have the more pointed bill. They're gonna be a little bit more streamlined in shape so they can get down and grab those fish. Typically they're gonna have little serrations or a hook on their beak so they can catch those slippery fish underwater. Whereas our other ducks, let's see, like our mandarins over here, and wherever the rest of them are, we'll find them on the other side of the pond. We can go on a field trip. Our bears, poachards, and our falcated ducks over here, they are dabbling ducks. So they are going to eat pretty much at the surface of the water. They're going to get some of that floating pellet, some aquatic vegetation. We feed them greens, we feed them insects. So they're pretty much going to hang out at the surface. Though sometimes you'll see them getting some of the food underwater. They're typically going to be surface eaters. So our two bicolor males just kind of swam over, see what was going on.
So for those asking, when we're reopening, we are closed until further notice. Once we know when we're able to open in accordance with the state of Ohio, we will let you all know.
Yeah, we are really excited for that when we are able to reopen. I know all of the keepers, all of the staff, and all of the animals miss everyone. So we are really excited for when we will be able to see you, but definitely whenever that is safe for everyone involved.
So Danny wants to know, so she visits a park or a pond around her house. She knows not to feed the ducks bread. So what would you recommend she feeds the ducks?
Yeah, Danny, that is so great. We want to avoid feeding wild ducks bread whenever possible because it is a processed food item, and so that's not very natural. They wouldn't find that in their native habitat, and that can actually make them overweight, and it also can kind of hurt the water quality of that pond or wherever you're feeding them. So what I would recommend that you would feed would be maybe some seed, maybe some peas and corn that you might have, some greens, whether you have some romaine lettuce hanging around your house, or even dandelion greens you would find in your yard, as long as there's no pesticides or anything on there. Definitely more healthy options for you to feed your ducks, but also just hanging out and watching those wild ducks, I think, is really, really fun. Obviously feeding them is super enjoyable, but really just watching them in their environment, how they interact, whether they're sticking their little backsides in the air while they're underwater trying to get food, or maybe you'll see a male displaying to a female, or how they interact with one another. So I definitely think that just watching their natural behavior and feeding them some of those more natural items can be really, really enjoyable, especially if you need a stress reliever, a lot of stuff going on, things like that. A new species that just kind of wandered over is one of our bears, poachards, over here. And this is actually a critically endangered species. So this is one of the most endangered animals that we have here at the Akron Zoo. They are native to Asia, and we are actually participating in a breeding program with them in order to help bolster their populations. So that is a species survival plan that is managed through the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So that is a collaboration between different zoos and aquariums throughout the country to help breed this species and have a very genetically diverse captive population. So I really like to think about our species survival plans as kind of like online dating for zoo animals, but instead of like matching based on personality traits and common interests, it's matching based on their genetics. So we want to make sure that the population that we have here in zoos and aquariums are super healthy, very genetically diverse, in order to potentially re-release species and things like that. So breeding and release programs have definitely had a lot of success, and that is one of the things that we are really proud to participate in here at the Akron Zoo. Another species that we do that with right here on the pond are our scaly-sided mergansers, and they must be hiding out on the deep side of the pond. So we can see if they show up, or maybe we'll take a field trip over there, but the waterfall will be pretty loud So I'm not really sure if you'll be able to hear me.
Before we head over there, let's answer just a couple more questions.
Yeah.
So how do we keep the birds from flying away?
Yeah, so all of the birds on the pond actually have their flight feathers trimmed on one wing. So we do that for their safety because this is not typically their native habitat, and they don't have they don't have the skills to survive here in Akron. And we give them everything that they need here, so they are nice and safe. We have these lines over here to prevent or kind of deter some of those wild birds, like I mentioned, from out competing some of our birds on the pond. So it's definitely a deterrent for them. But these guys, they have their flight feathers trimmed.
Does that hurt them?
That does not hurt them. So just like if you get your hair cut, you can't feel your hair, it doesn't hurt. Feathers are made out of the same thing, keratin, and they cannot feel that, so it does not hurt them. Good question. There's one of our scaly-sided mergansers. So that is a female. We have 2 females and 1 male, and so they are one of our biggest birds on the pond. Again, native to Asia. They have that pointed bill, like you can see, so they are fish eaters. They're diving ducks. Their feet are kind of set back further on their body. You can see her kind of scooting along the water there, and that helps them to be able to dive down and get all that fish.
So how many different species of ducks do we have on the pond?
On our waterfowl pond, we have 8 different species of ducks.
And are they all from different continents?
Most of them are from Europe and Asia. And then our hooded mergansers and our buffle heads are from North America.
So how long do the ducks live?
That's a really great question. There's kind of a range. So they are, the ones that we have here are definitely typically expected to live longer than their counterparts that are going to be in their native habitat, just because they receive veterinary care. There are no predators, and they get all of the food that they need. But typically, a lifespan of a waterfowl species is going to range from 8 to 10 years for some of them to all the way up to 20 to 30 years. So definitely a huge age range there based on the species.
So do we have any buffle heads?
We do. We have 3 male buffle heads. They are apparently being shy today, and I believe they are over on the deep side of the pond. So where we are right now, it's pretty shallow. It's better kind of for some of our dabbling ducks, and all of our birds here kind of hang out in different areas throughout the day. So our side over on the other by our waterfall is pretty deep, and so sometimes our diving ducks hang out over there. So we can field trip over there, potentially.
Absolutely.
It might be loud, like I said. Our waterfall was just turned on yesterday, and that helps to kind of aerate the pond and reduce some, scum or anything that might build up on the surface of the pond. It just kind of improves the water quality. I'm not really sure where the best place to look at them is, but our two of our 3 buffle heads are hanging out on that log over there. And then down here we have our scaly-sided mergansers, the other 2. So underneath that little shelter is our male, who's just coming out of his breeding plumage. So he's a little bit in transition there. And then our female is hanging out behind that log, or behind that tree over there. And then right on that rock is a really good example of a hooded merganser, that sexual dimorphism that I mentioned earlier. So we have the male with a black and white head, and then the female is more brown. So they are demonstrating that wonderfully over there.
All right, we'll head back over so you guys can have a easier time hearing the loud waterfall.
Yeah, it is beautiful and very soothing, but also not great for peaceful life. So we will head back over to our shallow side. maybe our bike call will call again. He was just making a call, and it's really cute. And I would try to imitate it, but he does a much better job. But looks like he's gonna be a little quiet, but that's okay. He is hanging out by one of our nest boxes. So you may notice that there are several different boxes placed throughout the habitat, and those are nest boxes. So they're filled with different nesting materials, and we check those every single day to see if any of our birds have laid eggs. And based on what species we are going to breed this season, we either will pull them for artificial incubation or just kind of monitor and let the birds do all the work themselves. Some species are easier to kind of manage in an artificial incubation setting, where some of them do better naturally incubated. But like I said, those breeding programs that we participate in, like our scaly-sided mergansers and our bears, those are ones that we're definitely on the lookout for if they lay any eggs. And then based on facility need, whether a zoo in a different part of the country really wants to add Mandarin ducks to their collection, we're definitely going to work with them and see if we can breed Mandarin ducks that year, for example, or something like that. So it's based on what other facilities need, and then the needs of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums and those species survival plans.
So have we ever had success with breeding?
We definitely have had success with breeding. I know that we have been successful breeding hooded mergansers and Mandarin ducks and marbled teal, which is a species that we don't have on the pond currently, but we used to. And so we have definitely had success, and it's really, really exciting. We have a whole incubation room set up down in our vet clinic, and all of the setup we need to raise little baby ducks and all of that good stuff. So really, really exciting stuff, and fingers crossed for continued success.
So how do we keep the lines that are over the habitat from being tangled?
We replace them pretty frequently. So whether, a wild duck would happen to break one, or just me being clumsy when I'm servicing the exhibit, I definitely have snapped a couple of these lines before. So we definitely check them every single day, make sure that they're not in the habitat or anything, and replace any ones that do get tangled or damaged in any way.
Why do we have those over the habitat?
We have them because sometimes our wild birds will outcompete some of our collection animals, and we want to make sure that our collection animals are getting all of the nutrition that they need, and so just another way to combat that over competing is to have these as a deterrent, because the wild birds can see them and it makes it a little trickier to land. So it's not like, oh, this is a really easy free meal. It makes it a little bit trickier for them.
So do we have white-winged wood ducks?
Not on our pond. I know as a facility we are involved in some white-winged wood duck conservation and breeding, but we do not have them on our waterfowl pond.
And they are currently the most endangered bird in the world?
I believe so, though I'm not 100% sure. I do know that they are endangered, and that we are very involved and invested in hoping to bring them back from the brink of extinction.
And we have had good success with breeding them here.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a couple of ducks hanging out at this end of the pond.
Yeah, we'll go check them out. So this is what we refer to as our shallow side. So the depth is only a few inches, and a lot of our ducks kind of hang out over here. We have quite a few nest boxes. This is a better look at some of those Bears poachards. So these are the most similar in male versus female looks. You can tell the males apart because they have the lighter eyes though. So we have all 3 of our females right here, and then 2 of our males. We have 4. So they must be around swimming somewhere else. So these are the critically endangered ducks native to Asia and Russia.
I don't know if you guys can hear them, but they're talking.
Yeah. And if you notice their little kind of anklets that they have on there, that is a way for us to tell them apart and just kind of monitor. So doesn't hurt them at all. We make sure that they are nice and loose and safe for them, but just helps us to, you know, tell them apart, make sure everyone is good and nice and healthy.
So the remnants of their breakfast is right there. So what's the green stuff?
Yeah, so that looks to me like a little bit of kale. So they get greens a couple of times a week for those dabbling ducks, and that rotates the different kinds of greens that we get, whether it's kale or endive or dandelion. We kind of rotate through, and then they get insects a few times a week alternating as well, so mealworms or crickets or something like that, and that all is very reflective of their natural diet. So those dabbling ducks are definitely going to eat a lot of aquatic vegetation along the surface or in shallow spots of, you know, ponds or streams, something like that, and then also those little insects and things. So definitely recreate that here for them, make sure they are nice and healthy, and then that pellet, like I mentioned, is nutritionally complete. So just like you would feed your dog or cat at home, you know, dog or cat food, and that has every single thing that they need in it, all of the micronutrients and vitamins and minerals and everything in there, that's pretty much what it is, just for ducks. So it floats on the surface there, so those dabblers are able to get it. And you can see these are dabbling ducks here, so they're going to eat at the surface of the water. They have that nice rounded bill that's going to enable them to kind of almost like, I don't know, like, I can only apparently figure out how to do it with my hand. Just kind of go like this on the surface of the water, and it's going to, you know, bring in everything that they need. Obviously they don't have teeth as birds, so they can, you know, rip and tear with that, those greens and things like that with their little rounded bills.
So do these birds hang out at the waterfowl pond all winter?
They do. So that is an excellent question. We have, this pool is filtered and does not freeze, and except, you know, sometimes if it's super really cold, the shallow side will freeze a little bit, but typically does not freeze at all. And these birds are all pretty cold hardy, so they are able to withstand, you know, Akron winters and everything like that. We do have indoor holding space if there is some crazy weather event that we can move them to, but typically they're going to hang out here all winter long. We are going to feed them a little bit more in the winter, and we're going to add that wheat to their diet to make sure that they're getting enough calories to stay warm. And we will offer them lots of different shelters and straw bedding and all that good stuff to make sure that they are nice and cozy. But a lot of these birds are native to, you know, Asia and Russia and places that, you know, get a lot colder than here, so they are well equipped for that. And then obviously in the summer they are pretty heat tolerant as well, and we'll give them different things to cool off or have for enrichment and everything. I'm looking at our mandarins over there, so that male is the more colorful one, kind of hanging out, and then our female's taking a little snooze.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you so much for hanging out with our waterfowl today. I hope that you learned a little bit more about them, and we really, really hope to see you soon. Again, my name is Mallory, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.